Thailand's proposed $15 tax on foreign tourists stirs debate. You may think $15 is a little bit of money, but people are talking about it. Let's see here. Bangkok, Thailand's plan to impose a 500 baht $15 tax on each incoming international visitor, possibly from 2022, has the tourism industry concerned about possibly reducing the number of tourists as the country prepares for further reopen its borders amid the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm laughing because $15 to most of us is not a lot of money, so one has to ask himself, are you gonna say you're not gonna go to Thailand because they're charging $15 to enter the country? I think if you really love going to Thailand, you probably make up that $15 and just pay it. The, the fee to be implemented is considerably high for those visiting Thailand, where hotel rooms can be had for as little as 1,000 baht, which is about $30. Thai Hotels Association President Marisa Sukosol Nombakti said in a recent interview with the Nikkei Asia, the 500 baht will affect potential visitors' decisions. So the hotel industry is against it. The proposed tax was raised from 300 baht that was originally approved by the National Tourism Policy Committee earlier this year. The Center for Economic Situation Administration, the government's policy-making body for economic issues, approved the 200 baht increase earlier this month, but it will still need cabinet approval to be put into force. The new tax is separate from the departure tax that has already been levied for decades on outgoing travelers, designated a passenger service charge, according to the Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand. The departure tax varies from 400 baht to 700 baht, depending on which airport passengers depart from. Travelers must pay 700 baht to leave Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi Airport, the country's main international gateway. In 2019, 39.9 million tourists spent 1.9 trillion baht in Thailand. They stayed in the country an average of 9.3 days, according to the Ministry of Tourism and Sports, and spent about 5,172 baht a day. The tax could crimp money flowing into the tourism sector. The proposed tax will be used to help transform Thailand from a low-budget destination to a more upscale market for international travelers. Don't do it because Thailand is known as a place where for cheap travelers, backpackers, not they don't want to be mixing with the upscale. If you want upscale, I guess you go to Singapore. That's more expensive. The additional costs won't have an impact on tourists as we want to focus on the quality market. Tourism Authority of Thailand Governor Yuttasak Supasorn told local media, "Well, look, you want to be upscale, you want to focus on quality. A lot of people who go there, they don't really care about that. You know, it's like I read a comment where somebody said like Times Square. Remember Times Square? It used to be a seedy place. with prostitutes, with peep shows, and then it's all transformed to like Disney and all that stuff. And somebody said, you know what? I miss the old Times Square with the seatedness, the peep shows, the prostitutes, and all that stuff. They miss that. They don't care for the Disney and um, all the what's it, the M&M chocolate bars and all this stuff. You know, M&M chocolate and buying all that stuff. They don't care for that. Bring back the seediness. The old Times Square. So, so the tax could be implemented as early as next year when the tourism authority expects to receive 5 billion baht from 10 million foreign visitors in 2022, an ambitious visitor forecast compared with other institutions such as the Bank of Thailand. The central bank expects only 6 million foreign travelers next year. Now look at this. Income from international tourists in 2019, right? Now look at Thailand. Thailand is way out there. And this is in billions of US dollars, right? Let's see here. Thailand is about, this is about 65 billion US dollars. Wow, that's a lot of money. And this was 2019. You looked at the graph here from zero, and the source is from the World Bank, right? Income from international tourists. So it's all the way out there. Thailand is at the top, right? Way at the top. Then comes Japan second, and Thailand is still way over Japan. Japan comes in around maybe like 48 billion US dollars, right? I can read this because I took a course in statistics years ago. So I remember how to read these type of graphs. Australia. Australia comes in third, a little less than Japan. And that's about right down here, probably about 47 billion. Macau, that's where they got all the casinos. Macau comes in a little below 40 billion US dollar. UAE, that would be the United Arab Emirates. They come in probably around 38 billion. Hong Kong, right there, comes in around probably 32, 33 billion. India, India comes in around like maybe 32 billion in 2019. That's before the pandemic hit. South Korea, South Korea is right over here. That's like probably like 25, 26 billion. Malaysia comes in next, around 22 billion. Saudi Arabia. Oh, I didn't even think people, tourists go to Saudi Arabia. I thought it was just like people who go to work in the oil fields and people from the Philippines working as maids and nurses and so forth who go there. So Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia is under 20 billion, just or maybe right around the 20 billion mark. Indonesia comes in. I was in Indonesia a few years ago. Uh, at the time, it was kind of confusing. I have to pause here for a minute because it was kind of confusing because I read that you need you need to pay for a visa and I contacted the Indonesian consulate. And sadly to say, and I use the word sadly because when you represent your country and your consulate, you're supposed to be up on stuff. And I want to know, well, and they were right here in New York, and I wanted to know, well, is there a fee and how much is the fee? And you know what the answer I got? They sent me back a link to a website. That that to me was very disappointing. They sent me a link. No, they supposed to know. They're the consulate. They supposed to be able to tell you, yeah, if you traveling with an American passport, then sure, there's a fee or this is what it's gonna cost. Anyway, to make a long story short, I arrived in Indonesia, Jakarta, and I followed instructions. I stood on the line and I paid a fee. And I think it was in US dollars. Yeah. Right? The man took my money, put a stamp or whatever, you give it to me receipt. Then when I went to clear through immigration, the guy told me, well, he said we no longer charge a fee for a visa. Oh wow, how about that, huh? We no longer charge a fee. So next time you come, this is what he told me. Next time you come to Indonesia, you don't have to pay a fee. So I'm like, wait a minute, what kind of nonsense is this? I mean, I stood on that line. The guy sees my passport and everything. The guy who's taking the money from me, couldn't he have just told me, no, we don't take a fee anymore? You know? No. The fee supposedly for like if you're traveling in business, not like tourism. Because I think they calculate that fee turns off a lot of people. If you want to increase tourism, forget about all the fees because fees seem to come as a hindrance, right? Even though in this article here they're talking about $15, which is not a lot of money, but sometimes once people see like a fee, you know, it's like it's a turnoff. But once you get in the country, you're gonna start spending money anyway, and the country is going to make back money on you anyway because you're going to be spending for hotel, for food, for travel, maybe if you go drink in a bar or so forth, entertainment. So they come out better. So if you say, well, you know what, I don't like paying fees. I'm just gonna boycott. Not really boycott, but I'm just gonna avoid. Down there's some countries you can do that, right? Maybe Thailand is not one, but there's some countries, maybe like Indonesia, you could say, oh, I don't need to go to Indonesia. I could just go to Malaysia or so forth. There's hot sun in both countries anyway, Malaysia and Indonesia. So what the hell? I'll just go to Malaysia. You see, so that's how some people think. So now, move from Indonesia, we go down to Vietnam. Vietnam right here. So that's about $12 billion US dollars in 2019. Vietnam earned. Philippines. Philippines come right under Vietnam. Imagine that. It's probably about probably about 11 and a half. Just about what Vietnam makes in tourism dollars. So Philippines is doing poorly in comparison, you know. Philippines need to invest in more infrastructure and their roads and so forth to attract more tourists. And it's not that easy. It's not that easy traveling around the Philippines. Believe me, I know. You know, there's a lot of stuff because because it's an archipelago. Lots of boats, lots of things. You know, when you travel on a ferry in the Philippines, let's say you're going from Cebu City to Bohol, you get on it. Now, maybe for the average American, what you hear is that there's like not really an announcement, but there's like a prayer. There's a prayer that God will keep us safe, something like that, and we will arrive safely, and there'll be no storms and this. So that could scare the hell out of some people, to hear a prayer like that, asking God to keep us safe during our journey. And Bahal is not that far, probably an hour and a half from Cebu. So you hear them praying, but that's part of the culture in the Philippines. It's not that something is going to happen to the ferry, even though in the Philippines they're notorious sometimes for ferries going down and bad storms usually. But that's just part of the culture. They believe in praying, you see. So that's one of the things you encounter traveling in the Philippines. So it's notorious for getting around. Unlike in Thailand, if you go on a boat to go to another island, you're not going to hear any prayers. You're not going to see any monk chanting anything like that. I've been on their boats, and never once anybody was praying and asking to keep us safe. But things do happen there too. Then Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is all the way down here. This looks like about $4 billion. Then the Maldives. Then Myanmar. Myanmar. This was before the coup, mind you, because this year they had a coup. I think it was February the 1st. It was snowing here that day. And then I saw in the news there was a coup. The military took over. So now they're probably getting like $0 because who's gonna travel to Myanmar or Burma now with the military shooting at people, and military doesn't really give a damn, who they kill. They don't care. They're not listening to anybody. They don't seem to be afraid of anybody. They don't even concern about the United Nations or anything like that. So that country you have to really stay away from in the meantime. So reviving tourism is an urgent task for Thailand's economic recovery. The sector and related business used to account for 20% of the country's gross domestic product prior to COVID. From July, the Southeast Asia countries started accepting vaccinated tourists on the southern island of Phuket without any quarantine. The government intends to start welcoming vaccinated tourists at its main tourist destination on the mainland, such as Bangkok, Pattaya, Hua Hin, and Chiang Mai, from November. While some disagree with the government's move to hit foreigners with the new charge, they agree that the tourism industry needs a war chest. Pong Sak Pongakon. Those Thai words are very long. President of the Thailand Hotels Association, Southern Chapter, said the funds should be used in developing tourism-related projects, protecting the environment, and promoting regional tourism. That's true, because I went to Koh PP years ago, where that movie was filmed with that guy. I think it's called the Ocean, something like that. The guy from the Atlantic, the Titanic movie, and you can't. From what I heard now, there's something you can't even do when you get in that island. It's not the same like when I was there. That's how much tourism, tourists have destroyed, and the island is so packed. When I went there, it wasn't like that. I went there in 2004. That's not too long after the movie was made. But since then, the place has too much tourism. And in Thailand, they never seem like they would limit, you know, the amount of people. It's like more money, more money, more money. And that's what they're interested in. The more money they can get, fine. They don't care. Come on down. And so they ruining a lot of stuff, ruining a lot of the corals and so forth, which used to make the island so beautiful. So this was going on in Thailand, you know. And when you go on vacation, if you swim, you want to see some nice corals. He said, but I don't think the funds should be obtained from tourists. Kong Sak feels it should be bankrolled by the government and allocated to every region because each region would have different needs so that the fund could be adapted to match their needs. Shairat Triratana Jaraspan, former chairman of the Tourism Council of Thailand, insisted that the fund would be useful during a crisis. I think, yeah, corruption in Thailand. I think this is a good time to implement the tax, as the COVID-19 pandemic has already pointed out a clear need. Chirac said the proposed fund would be a very useful mechanism to lend support to the tourism industry if we face another crisis in the future. And if you have all that money sitting there, some politician is going to say, wow, look at all that money sitting there, building interest. It's time to put my hand in a cookie jar. Thailand's tourism infrastructure could use an upgrade. The latest evidence came from a careless government that left personal details of 106 million visitors exposed on the internet. The massive data breach contained each visitor's full name, sex, passport number, residency status, and visa type, along with their Thai arrival card number and date of arrival. Now that's really stupid. It was discovered by a cybersecurity research firm on August 22nd. Thai authorities removed the data the next day. Some tourist attractions in Thailand have been criticized as having a dual pricing. That's true. Because the first time I went there, one of my Thai friends came meet me and took me to the Chiang Mai Zoo. They had that cola beer, those lovely beers from China, the ones we see playing and eating and just being lazy. And the price is different. A different price for her and a different price for me. And it shows there foreigner price and local Thai price. And by the way, I don't know if it changed now, but it used to be and probably still is. If you live in Thailand as a foreigner, you still had to pay the foreign price. You know. Now it might have changed, but there was an American who was living in Thailand, and he complained about that also. That no matter how long he lives in Thailand, he has to pay this foreigner price and not a local price, which is kind of unfair because if somebody if somebody comes from Thailand and we go to the Brown Zoo here in New York, we both pay the same. We both pay the same fare, except, but there are some exceptions because when one of the Thai my friend's Thai friend was here, and I took her to one of the museums, you know. Which one was this? Up near, it's on Fifth Avenue over there. And they have lots of art and so forth. If you're a resident of New York, you pay less. So that was one exception. So she had to pay more than me. And I read that. I didn't know about that because I usually don't go to the art museum and so forth. I don't think I don't think it was the museum more than that because there are like a few of them. And I showed my driver license, and I paid less, but that's only because I'm a resident of of New York. I live in New York, but she had to pay the full price. But Thailand is different. Most of the other stuff, if you go to, there's a price for Thai people and a price for a foreigner. And the price for the foreigner is much, much higher. Now, getting back to this here, let's see. So, some tourist attractions in Thailand have been criticized as having a dual pricing system that charges foreigners more than Thais without corresponding services. Let's see, cut this off. Yeah. Um, without corresponding services that justify the added cost. In other words, then yeah, you're charging the foreigner more money, but there's nothing really to see for it. The only difference is that the person is charged more money because they're not Thai. So it's not like you provide an extra service or you provide in maybe somebody to speak their language to take them around. Nothing like that. Yeah. So that's the end of the article. So anyway, Thailand is at the top in Asia. You look at it, see, Thailand got like 65 billion US dollars in tourism. And then comes Japan, Australia, Macau, UAE, Hong Kong, India, South Korea, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Myanmar. Wow. So Philippines, you gotta get your act together, you know? Improve improve your infrastructure, your roads, because you got a lot of stuff in the Philippines that tourists could come see. But you have to improve those, and then you can get some of that money that Thailand is currently getting, instead of Thailand having getting all that money from tourism.